It's been obvious the last 5 years. You can see Canada has went backwards instead of going ahead. I believe there isn't going to be much left for future generations other than a debt that they can't afford to pay down.
There's an abundance of resources in Canada. The world will continue to need energy.
Sometimes I think if this were another country and we had the third greatest oil resources on the planet as Canada does, they might have a different and more generous approach to all that the oil and gas sector does for all of Canada.
We need more than just Trans Mountain going to Tidewater. We need a pipeline east, we need another pipeline going west.
My hope in all this, not only in the natural resource sector, but the renewable, is to get our people out of the conditions we're in, to get out of the system that we're stuck in under the Indian Act.
This current federal government doesn't really particularly like the oil and gas industry. I think if they thought the oil and gas industry could go away tomorrow without much pain in terms of job loss, they would wave that wand.
The protesters brought traffic to a standstill.
Some of our people are being paid to go to the front lines and stop these things. Instead of fighting it, help us find a balance, because that's the true goal.
We're not going to pay down the debt without using our natural resources. It's our last hope. My name is Dean Schlosser, president of DNF Welding. We do all aspects of pipeline construction and repairs. I've done it since 1984. I'm a welder by trade. So I have kids, and I have a grandkid, hopefully more. I don't want them to be paying for the rest of their lives and living in a poorer Canada. And that's where we're headed right now. It's been obvious the last 5 years. You can see Canada has went backwards instead of going ahead. Previous to that, the future looked very, very good. Now, not so much. I'm not impressed by what I see.
We're working extremely hard, doing absolutely everything we can to resolve these situations.
I believe there isn't going to be much left for future generations other than a debt that they can't afford to pay down. Like we're looking at the first generations that are going to have less than the generation before them. And this is unheard of in Canada. Every generation previously has done better than the one before it. We're not going to do that. There's many people that can't even afford to buy a house right now. A lot of people can't even afford to buy a car. And this isn't good. This is a bad trend. Like, how are they going to have kids? How are they going to support a family when they can't afford to live themselves? That's the direction we're headed in.
Well, there's two ways to deal with debt. If you're a government or deficits, one is the revenue side, and one is the expenditure side. First of all, post-pandemic, there's no one sector in any country in the world that has poured the money into pandemic responses. The Trudeau government has. There's no one sector that can pay for it on the revenue side. This is going to be a very long-term process for Canada to even reduce its debt. If we ever get a government that's interested in it, I don't think the current government is frankly interested in that issue, debt retirement. It's going to take many years, and a plan that's probably focused both on government expenditures and increasing revenues. But it certainly would be contributory. I mean, anything that expands your GDP, anything that expands the tax base, even if rates aren't increasing, is going to increase revenue to all levels of government. Sometimes I think if this were another country and we had the third greatest oil resources on the planet as Canada does, they might have a different and more generous approach to all that the oil and gas sector does for all of Canada. Oil and gas, the industry itself, through royalties and indirect taxes and other direct taxes, funds hospitals and schools and builds roads and provides quality of life.
If you're getting $40 a barrel and the United States is taking $20 of it, you'd be doubling your money if you could get it to Tidewater, because it's sold from the coast. The people that buy it, they have to pay for the shipping across the oceans. It costs $9 to go down the pipeline, but it still costs not $9 to go down the pipeline to get to the United States. So that's $29 that's gone off the price of the barrel of oil instead of just the 9.
And the differential closes when you get more oil to Tidewater, when you get more oil to more than one customer. $1.5 billion to industry that they're deprived of from reinvesting because we sell our oil at a discount because we can't build a dang pipeline, in this country.
Well, there's various oil products run through pipelines. There's many kinds, right down to refined products to the heavy crudes run bitumen, heavy crudes run through them. Natural gas runs through the pipelines. Sometimes natural gas is pumped as a liquid, which is called NGL, natural gas liquids. The product, majority of it is moved through electrical pumps. There's a lot of the gas pipelines, the natural gas pipelines, they run on turbines, gas turbines, so they take oil off the line that's being pumped down the line to pump the line to fuel down. The gas turbines are very efficient. They don't cause a lot of pollution. And what happens is they generate a lot of heat, like gas being pumped down the pipeline, the compressors create a lot of heat, so they take the heat and from the heat they actually generate electricity to support that goes back into the grid.
There is no conveyance for any hydrocarbon that is perfect. There's no way to transport any item that's perfectly safe that is 100% accident free, for example, or risk free, but it is the safest, and that's empirically, it's demonstrably true. It's been proven to be the safest. I think we need to be honest. If we're going to have a credible case to make for more pipelines with our fellow citizens in Quebec or somewhere else, we need to be honest about it and say, no, pipelines are not perfect, and there will be likely incidents in the future, but they are safer than rail, most assuredly. That should hit home. That should resonate in Quebec, particularly, given the terrible accident that happened there not too long ago.
The devastation from that train explosion in Quebec is becoming apparent tonight. 5 people are confirmed dead, but police say that number is likely to rise. Dozens are still missing.
You don't see all of the derailments that are listed on the website of the Canadian Transportation of Railway, but you definitely see the ones that are tragic on the news. And for it to be safe, even to be trucked on the highway, that's concerning. Accidents happen all the time.
One pipeline can pump down 1 million barrels a day. To get 1 million barrels in a truck or a train, it's an incredible amount of equipment going down the highway or down the tracks. And the thing is, pipelines mostly run outside of cities. They don't run right directly through the middle of the city. I've been involved in many aspects of the reclamation of the land after. There have been small leaks and large leaks, and when we left the site, it was better than it was previous to us being there, before the leak happened. Probably the most important thing on the pipeline is the weld process, welding the pipeline together, because that's where you have the majority of your failures if you're going to have a failure. So the welders go through very extreme testing. I know in the past some of the tests that we do for welding on the pipeline are probably some of the toughest tests in the world. And we get tested. At one time we used to get tested every year. They've moved it to 18 months, and now it's every 2 years. And it's not an easy test. Like we do some of the testing, 40% of the welders fail. This is how high level these tests are. They have pressure loss monitors all up and down the pipeline. They know within minutes if they have a leak. And if they have a leak, their lines all get shut down. It doesn't matter if it's on the line that has a pressure loss or the one next to it, because some places they have 6 lines in a row, side by side, going down across Canada. And every line is shut down. And they go out and inspect to find what the problem is, if there is a leak there or if it was some other thing that happened. But immediately when that happens, all the pumps go down, all the way across Canada into the United States. All the valves are shut.
And Energy East was one that we were strongly supportive of. And I thought that would be the easiest one. I always likened it to sort of the next national dream. You know, if the first one was a railroad, this pipeline made a lot of sense. It was 2/3 converting existing pipeline, and it would help reduce our dependence in the other part of Canada on oil from places like Venezuela and the Middle East, which doesn't. Here's a country like Canada with the 3rd greatest oil reserves on the planet, and that part of Canada imports all their oil from these places. So this pipeline was the partial answer to that question, and I thought it would be a slam dunk, and it's of course now a DOA as well. Is this a country or not? Is my rhetorical question.
We need more than just Trans Mountain going to Tidewater. We need a pipeline east, we need another pipeline going west. And that's still not going to take it all, but it'll ease the problems we have right now getting rid of our oil at a world price. And one of the biggest pushbacks on pipeline going across our province is Quebec.
The province of Quebec saw its equalization transfers from the national government increase year after year after year to over $13 billion.
There's a small portion in that money, federal transfer, that goes through the Indian Act to fund and the development, this management of programs. So 643 First Nations in Canada get a federal contribution agreement based on that federal transfer from Alberta. So when we stop development, we stop our oil sands, we stop our oil and gas in Alberta, that federal transfer is not going to be as much going to the federal government.
They went full Venezuela and nationalized the pipeline, but credit to them for doing so. Because as I said, you know, given their proclivities and biases perhaps, and the fact that this wasn't going to probably change any votes in the West, and it didn't, they did it anyway, and I give them credit for it. And that pipeline will get done, and it'll help the differential issue, and hopefully maybe demonstrate in the future how pipelines can be done. I think the privatization, the future privatization of the now government-owned pipeline holds great promise for us in terms of getting other pipelines built if the privatization involves meaningful Aboriginal ownership.
It is a key focal point for us to be a part of. You know, it crosses our traditional territories. Our traditional territories overlap, and I think if we can find some cohesion to work together on it, you know, it could be very successful and very beneficial for First Nations in Canada. The everyday Canadian doesn't understand that our communities do not have any investment capital. If anything, that's probably our biggest challenge. And for sure, when we see an opportunity that passes right through our communities, we want to be a part of it. There's an abundance of resources in Canada. The world will continue to need energy. And if we can get some ownership on some infrastructure here in Canada, for example, the pipelines, you know, then I think that's a step in the right direction for us, for First Nations, to really get off the dependency of the federal government. Some of our people have been infiltrated with the environmental movement of some third-party, we'll call them third-party interests coming into Canada on not moving our natural resources to world markets. And they've taken the approach of protecting the land, which we agree with 100%, but you know, they're adamant that there be no development, and no development really keeps us in this rut that we're stuck in. You know, we have impoverished communities that sorely need different revenues. And then this is tough for me to say, is that, you know, some of our people are being paid to go to the front lines and stop these things. You know, a friend of mine ran an organization in Calgary, and he was called by one of the environmental groups to say, we need First Nations people in front of the cameras. We'll pay them $300 per person. If they're wearing traditional regalia, we'll give them $800. So to me, that hurts. That's not the proper representation. Yes, we care about the planet. Yes, we care about Mother Earth. But in the same sense, there's a balance that we can find if we work together to find it.
Now, at this moment in Canada, oil and gas sector plays a significant role in the economy. There's no way we can shut it down in a given day that hereafter we are not doing it. I think it's a matter of proper policies to taper it down. If you say that with the income it generates, maybe now we have to invest that income down in the road to certain directions which are more greener. Right, so in that particular case, some Scandinavian countries are good examples. They built wealth out of this oil and gas industry, and now they are investing in different directions.
There is nothing in Canada right now that's going to pay for transition. It just can't happen without our natural resources, and particularly oil and gas. And by taking the oil out of the ground, it doesn't leave something missing. It's something we should use and benefit from in the interim between our switch over to whatever we switch over to.
You can see the problem from different angles. If you see it from the cost point of view, yes, it might make sense. If you see it from the environmental point of view, yes, there are some concerns. If you see it from the societal point of view, there are many concerns, right? So where to find the proper balance, right? So having a pipeline and taking that oil to a better market, which we get better prices, so versus handling these environmental and the societal concerns. So that's again a higher level policy decision, and at the same time it's a consultation with all these stakeholders to identify, okay, if you make that profit, with what cost? And as individual stakeholders or communities, what are you getting out of it? And that discussion has to happen. And with that discussion, if you figure it out, yes, having this pipeline, we know that there's an impact of that pipeline, but we have a target. The profits coming out of this pipeline will be used for this one after this many years. So then the discussion might be very different, because we are taking in our personal lives also, we sometimes take risks, but we know that by taking that risk, we are going to a better future.
We're faced with a forced transition of getting away from the fossil fuels to the renewable, the solar, the wind power. And if it makes sense, by all means, again, the biggest problem that our communities will have is investment capital. How do we build it on our community? And there's only so much government subsidy that is out there for our communities to take advantage of. And finding a partner to do it is one thing. I truly hope that we can find a balance there as well, because what's being pushed in our face in oil and gas is this carbon footprint, the carbon emissions. And when you see the production of windmills, when you see the production of how you produce a solar panel, yeah, there's still a carbon footprint that's there. So, regardless of what we're trying to accomplish, the world needs energy in all forms, renewable and non-renewable. And when we step forward in this renewable space, we have to ensure that we have not only some financial benefit, but we continue to protect the planet and do it right.